Welcome to Simply Sarah. I'm Sarah Stock. I'm your host, and I am delighted that you are here for this incredible conversation. Whether you are listening around the world, if you are listening live, however this chooses to work at best in your life, we just want to celebrate you. The numbers have come out again. And for a show like ours, people will watch on average about 23 to 26 minutes. And you are watching on average 38 to 42 minutes. We are just so excited that the work that we are doing is stuff that's impacting your life in such a good way. So we want to say thank you to our sponsors, to the Stegner family, to the Art of Forgiving with the artist Michelle. We also want to say thanks to Katie Ingersoll for her work that she is doing, encouraging people in different ways. And we are thankful that you are here. And also today for Beatty Carmichael, who's going to be joining us and sharing with us profound things today. Beatty, thank you so much for being here with us.
Well, thank you, Sarah. I am very excited about being here.
And I just want to take a quick moment to say thank you also for helping with the lighting and the sound and the background and all the things to make this show be what it is. And so, Beatty, tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today, because you have been helping people profoundly break barriers in their life. And I'm excited about this conversation, but I'm really curious about your journey to where you are today.
Yeah, my journey is actually an interesting one. I was raised in a medical family. In fact, medical generations go back 7 generations, almost 200 years. And I went into business instead of medicine. And I found out later that there must have been some still sort of family mantle, if you call it that, to bring healing to people, because about 10 years ago, God started to move me to want to pray for healing for people. And this was really uncomfortable for me. I grew up in a legalistic, super conservative Christian church, and they didn't believe in this stuff. They said, well, God can heal, but he mostly never does. And so I would always pray, Lord, heal this person if it be your will, because maybe it's God's will that that person be sick. And I think they came to this conclusion. There's a passage in the Bible that says, if you pray according to God's will, then he hears you, and if he hears you, he'll do what you've asked him to do. So as we pray for either ourselves or a loved one or someone else, and we pray that God would heal them, and he doesn't, then it must have been God's will that they don't be healed. Okay? And if it's God's will that they don't, then it must be God's will that they got sick in the first place. So that's kind of where I came from. And I was watching this show on one of the streaming platforms, and it was a docuseries. Turned out to be a 3-part docuseries of some guy with a video camera walking around with a couple of guys out in the public marketplace, out on the streets or fairs or things of that sort. And they would pray for people, and those people would be healed. They'd be getting out of wheelchairs. They'd be getting rid of their cane or their crutches, or doing things that something healed in their body, and now they can operate normally. And it really gripped me. and it gripped me because, have you ever had one of those things, Sarah, where something grabs you and it just won't turn off? You know,
Yes.
it drives you. Well, this is what was happening to me. It drove me. I watched that one. I watched the next one. I watched the next one. I started to pursue this. And I felt in my heart that God was wanting me to go pray for people, strangers, for healing. And I'm an introvert. I don't do that. I didn't believe that God wanted people healed. So how could I pray for healing if I thought that he probably brought sickness? So it took me 6 months. I did a deep dive. I recognized that my church could not help me, so I went, anyone who's been in a legalistic environment like that, I went outside of the wall and said, oh, wow, there's this whole other group of people that believe in God, and they believe that God wants to heal. So I started to study what they believed. I not so much their opinion, but using the Bible as a source of spiritual truths. They would reference things in the Bible, why they believed it was God's will to heal. I would go look them up myself and ask God to show me what his truth was. And I started to come to the conviction that God really does want us healed. And the fact that we pray for healing and he doesn't heal, it isn't a factor that it's not his will, but something else is missing. And then once I got to that conclusion that it was God's will to want to heal, this was actually October 2016. And I went out and I went to a gas station, I went to a grocery store, and went to Walmart. And I prayed for 18 people, anyone I could find that looked like they had pain. And God healed 6 of them, a third of them. I saw degenerative discs, rheumatoid and osteoarthritis healed. I saw RSD, torn ligaments in someone's hand, and things of that sort. And it surprised me, really surprised me. I went back to my church. They said, well, you know, Satan can heal too. And so I realized it's time to leave that church. But that's the journey of how I got. That's the beginning journey of how I got here. But it was God directed it, blew my mind, led me into things that I never believed was real. And he's taken me on a much deeper journey ever since.
Wow. Absolutely remarkable. And to have that experience, first of all, as an introvert, choosing to be vulnerable and to go up to people and have conversations with them about their pain, and then offer to pray for them to be willing,
Yes.
right? To have
I
that.
got rejected.
I bet. I can imagine. I can absolutely imagine that. But also for you, it's a faith walk, right? That you are moving into a space of, I think this is going to work. My belief system is that it's going to work. How can I best be the vessel to help other people as well, to
Yes.
make their lives be better? And how I just think it's remarkable that you had yeses, and then out of that 1/3 of them were able to share with you that there had been a huge transformation that takes place in their life. I think one of the things that pain does, in my own experience at different times after surgery, is that it just narrows my world.
Yeah.
Like it just let me do the minimal of whatever that I have to in order just to get back to a place that I'm no longer in pain. And my 90-year-old mom just had her second hip replaced, and she said, you know, I'm going to probably live to be maybe 98, or maybe a little bit more than that, and I'm in pain now, so why don't I go ahead and deal with it? And so, in that process of having her hip replaced, the recovery was longer than when she was younger and had her first one done. You can imagine that. But again, seeing her world be, and she is a vibrant being and visits about 30 people a month. I mean, she is somebody who is out there doing and seeing people and using all of her gifts the best that she can, and watching her world shrink so quickly because of pain was something that was really, again, that marker for me of what pain can do in somebody's life. So it's not just it makes it harder to get around necessarily, but also that it makes the world, I think, seem so much smaller for a person.
It really does. I remember one of these ladies that I prayed for. She was in Walmart riding one of the electric scooters that they have for handicapped people. And she had, I call her a nurse assistant. She wasn't a nurse, but just some sort of assistant walking with her. And when I walked up to her, I said, hey, I see you're in a scooter. Do you have any pain that I can pray for? She said, yes. I said, what type of pain? She said, I have degenerative disc in my back, in my neck, so I can't move my head. I have degenerative disc in my lower back, so I can't bend over well. And she had, I think it was lupus and arthritis. I mean, she was just racked in pain.
Yeah.
And so I prayed for her, and I said, well, check it out. She stands up. I said, do something you can't do. She bent all the way over, touched her toes. She moved her head up and down and all around. And she said, I'm totally out of pain. And everything she was doing was normal for me. So I didn't really understand, was she really that bad in pain? So I asked the nurse assistant, who's bug-eyed at this point, and I said, how long have you been working with this lady? She said, about 2 years. I said, is this normal? She said, no, I've never seen her do that. The nurse assistant was with her to actually pull things off the shelf and bring it down to eye level because she couldn't turn her head up to look at the products.
Wow.
And so I started to see this type of stuff, and it began a journey where I've now, to kind of pull the veil open for our listeners, uncovered what God showed me later is what is the root of sickness, whether it's a chronic pain or persistent sickness or illness like asthma or COPD or things of that sort, or even things like addictions or relationship problems, that there's a common root. And that common root, if you can turn that root off and get rid of it, these things disappear. And that's what we'll be continuing to share on the show. And not only what it is, but how people can do it. Because kind of fast forward real briefly, and we'll get to this in my story, God took my gift away. I pray for people now, nothing happens. But what I do is I guide them how to pray. And 90% of the time, they are healed. In fact, this may be hard to believe, but 2 weeks ago, I was with my daughter. She's over in Spain, and she works at a ministry out there. And there was this older gentleman that was visiting from Ireland, and every time someone would talk to him, he would cup his right hand behind his ear and lean forward. And I talked to him later. He was sharing that about 10 years ago, there was a loud explosion that blew out his eardrums. His left ear completely deaf. His right ear could barely hear. And it was such a disappointment to him because he's a musician. And so now he can't even hear music to play. He'd been one of those that had prayed and begged and pleaded with God, please restore my hearing. And nothing happened. So I was guiding him through this process called the prayer of freedom. And in 20 minutes, helping him identify and remove these little spiritual roots that are usually the source of a lot of these issues. Clicking in both ears, he could hear out of his left ear first, better than his right ear. And then they both continue to improve to where they are now hearing perfectly normal, both sides. So he went from being completely deaf to completely normal in his hearing in just a matter of minutes by treating it as a spiritual thing, not a physical issue. There's a physical issue there, but the root was spiritual. And I've seen this happen with blinded eyes, not necessarily totally blind, but legally blind.
Yes.
Anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, addictions, asthma, diabetes, sleep apnea, all kinds of allergies and migraines and back pains and joint pain, to relationship conflicts where you're just battling all the time. Now the relationship is peaceful. And what I've learned, Sarah, is so much of the problems we go through in life have a spiritual root, and simply asking God to remove it or heal it or restore it isn't enough, that there's something more that He wants us to do. And once we learn how to do it, then we can stay free of those things and help our loved ones get free. So that's why I'm so excited about being here to share on your show what's happening.
And I'm so excited for the people around the globe who will be listening to this, because we have people who are listening, obviously, in America and Canada, but also in Europe, in Australia, in South Africa, and we are opening up also in India. And so just excited for you to be able to share this prayer with us. I think this is a really great place for us to take a quick break to say thank you to our sponsors. And when we come back, Beatty, I would just love for us to walk through that prayer, talking about the things that we can be doing, that can be changing, shifting things in the unseen world to help our lives and the lives of our loved ones become more full and become more productive, not necessarily in the sense of I'm getting more done, but more fulfilling in that space of production. So we will be right back. I think we'll be right back.
This is Michelle. She teaches women how to forgive the people who betrayed them, not by asking them to talk about it, but by helping them express it through art. She's an art therapist and the creator of the Art of Forgiving, a class that turns emotion into expression. No therapy jargon, no pressure to explain, because forgiveness isn't about the other person. It's about setting yourself free. This is Michelle, and this is the Art of Forgiving.
Are you ready to enrich and deepen your relationship with the spirit world and increase your knowledge of the shamanic journey? Then this is for you. The first step of the shamanic journey is to discover your power animal. This process allows you to step into Spirit's energetic field where they share their aspect of the divine's power. And as a result, you begin to realize the significance of their sacred power and what it means to you personally. Katie Ingersoll is a highly sought shamanic and Reiki teacher, a practitioner, a spiritual counselor, and educator. With grace, she integrates the rich teachings of the wise ancient ones into her workshops, encouraging her students to mesh these teachings into their everyday lives. For details of how you can discover your power animal, reach out to Katie at katieingersoll@gmail.com. Excited about this conversation because I know people around me who are struggling with things. And even for myself, I've been thinking about this as I knew that this conversation was coming up. Growing up in Africa, the youngest of three girls, and the person who helped take care of me, Mama Libba Libba, because I couldn't say Mama Elizabeth, was a widow, and she didn't have any children. And so, being part of that particular tribe, a pastor's wife, her husband had died, leaving her without any children. Her life was very difficult. And so each morning she would come and she would be at the house during the week, Monday through Friday. And the two of us would go off and have adventures together. Because she lived in a space of lack, because we had white skin, it was really important for her that that if I was going to be fussy about anything, that she would give me something to eat. No matter where we went, there was always, Mama Libba Libba would always be able to produce something to make me feel better. And I have been thinking about this for a while. And there have been points in my life. There was a program years ago, 22 years ago or so ago, called The Way Down. And it talked about the Israelites going into Egypt and what that looked like and felt like, and paralleling that to our own spiritual lives. And then that space of coming out and how they spent, 40 years in the wilderness, wandering around and again, paralleling that to our own spiritual lives and talking about intuitive eating and finding those places of, we eat when we're hungry and we eat what our body's calling for. And this was after I had had miscarriages and had our daughter and was back down to my best weight. And so have been there, have experienced that. And then other things in life showed up and I went back to my old eating habits. And so for me, that's the space I would love to have a different conversation with what fulfills me, not just in terms of food, but what fulfills me in terms of all of the things that I'm touching and doing. So I just put that out there I'm curious and would love to hear your next steps and those pieces that go along with that.
It's interesting, this whole idea of fulfillment. I think we're all looking for an abundant life. And abundant doesn't mean lots of rich material things. It means fulfillment. When you can go through life and be totally content and completely fulfilled. You have no issues coming against you. You have no attacks hitting you, no health issues, no relationship conflicts. You have enough for provision. That life is just so blessed that you kind of pinch yourself and say, oh my gosh, this is just a wonderful life. That's fulfillment. And in fact, as I'm sharing this, one of the passages in the Bible, and I use the Bible not so much as a religious book, but as a book of real spiritual truths, that as I tested and measured them, because everything I've done with this whole process is to measure what works and continue to press in. And I've used the Bible for that guidance, and everything it said that I've tested has come true. And one of the things it says, this is in what's called the New Testament, for those who aren't familiar with it. There's a prophet named Jesus, and he's speaking. He says that the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But I came that you might have life and have it abundantly. And a lot of times when you're in constant sickness, constant strife, constant stress, constant pain, constant whatever, it's like someone's stealing that life out of you. Just your mom with the hip, my mom, she's 90, 89 this year, and she just had a knee replacement a couple of years ago, and it totally revolutionized her life. She can now get around without pain, and her life has just become abundant from where it was. So anytime these things happen, there's something that steals it, and fulfillment comes when you get rid of that. And that's what I found with this. Let me catch you up to where I left off on my story and
Yes.
where we are now, because it's really interesting. So when I started to pray for people, 1/3 of them were being healed. And for me, healing is whatever their issues were, they completely disappeared, and you could test it, and it was not there. Then within a year, 90% of the people, glaucoma would disappear, surgery wounds after knee replacement instantly disappear, all kinds of anxiety and depression and RSD and just all kinds of things that we live with that just takes away our quality of life. Then about 3 or 4 years ago, Sarah, God took it away. I'd go out to Walmart once or twice a month on weekends and just walk up to people and pray. And as I would pray, 90% of the people who had something that you could measure, a physical issue, all that stuff would disappear. And then within 2 weeks, I'd be out praying, and almost 0% of the people got healed. So I went to God and I said, well, what's going on? He said, I took away your gift of healing. And I said, why would you do that? Because it was helping so many people.
Right.
And he said, because I want you to now learn how to do it through, he said authority, but the inference is how to take authority that I've given all mankind to then nullify that spiritual root that's driving it and teach people how to get healed on their own. Just like one of the commercials we just watched was about healing.
Yes.
Well, this is really interesting. I've been on a lot of shows of healers, and almost every one, they still have issues. I guide them through this on the show, and it completely disappears. So their healing process wasn't as effective
Right.
as what this Creator of the universe has already put in place for us to do. Everything works, but there's one thing that goes to the base of it almost consistently every time. So how this works, it's real interesting. Have you ever felt in your heart, Sarah, that you do something and you feel guilty because you know deep down it was wrong?
Yes.
And
I've
what
missed
that
the
is,
mark.
yeah. And did anyone have to tell you that you were wrong, or did you just feel guilty because you knew intrinsically in your spirit that it was wrong?
I knew in my spirit that I'd missed the mark. Yeah.
Yeah. So what happens is this God, when he creates us, he places in us what we call a conscience. And in that conscience, he puts his standards of right and wrong. And the whole idea is to guide us. If you think about a little child, when they grow up, we place our standards of right and wrong. We tell them what to do and what not to do. And if they disobey us, we're going to spank them and bring them into a state of discomfort so that they learn, don't do that again. Okay, and that's how you raise up children, so that as they become adults, they're well-trained adults. It seems to have a similar flavor. I'm not saying that this is how God does it with us. I use the term, I kind of use this as my metaphor throughout my book to explain how this works. But when we violate God's standard and we do something wrong and we feel guilty about it, more than just feeling guilty, there are things that happen in our lives, not immediately, but they come over time to where we can't really say cause and effect. This is the problem. We do something bad over here, and then over here something starts to develop in our lives, and we don't connect the dots. But the Bible, in a lot of these spiritual truths, connects the dots for us, but it's our job to go read it and figure out what's going on. And that's what I started to do when he said, I want you to now to understand the root of sickness and relationship conflicts and pain, and start to work on the process that anyone can do to get free on their own. So the first commercial we just saw there was talking about the art of forgiveness. Let me share just from my own personal experience, what I've seen simply by forgiving. By the way, there are about 3 things that came up when I was leading this deaf man in Spain. I had him take a very simple approach to say, and I'm sharing this conceptually. This isn't as easy to do. This is where we'll talk about what I put in my book. It's a work process to go through it.
Yes.
But I was able to guide him through this and had him ask God, is there a spiritual root, something I've done that violates your standard that could be at the root of my deaf ears? And even though it was a physical explosion, breaking a physical eardrum, what I find is if there's a spiritual root, all of that gets restored if you turn off that root. And there were 3 things that came up. I guided him through nullifying each of those, but 2 of those 3 things was forgiving people. Then I've seen blinded eyes where they were legally blind. You could not see anything because everything was blurry. By forgiving someone, I've seen that happen multiple times where the eyes instantly clear up. I've seen migraines disappear. I've seen all kinds of just pain in the body. I've seen neuropathy. Like if you go to my website, right up above my head, you'll see theprayeroffreedombook.com. That's the website for this. And if you go there about halfway down the page, you'll see live demonstrations I've done on different shows. Almost every one of those demonstrations, someone getting free of anxiety and depression, heavy anxiety, depression, scale of 0 to 10, it was an 8. He's had it since about 26 years. It instantly leaves. You watch him go, it's going down. It's at a 3 now. Is it gone? I mean, he feels it just going out. Forgiveness. Another lady with neuropathy in her legs. It was really interesting. Neuropathy in her legs, scale of 0 to 10, it was an 8 for 15 years. And when I led her through this process, and she asked God, what's the source of this? The only thing that came across her mind was someone that she needed to forgive. And she's had that neuropathy for 15 years. The doctors say, you're going to live with it. It's incurable.
Yeah.
Guess how far back that incident was where that person did something against this to this lady to where she did not forgive her.
Easily decades.
It was 15 years earlier. And I bring that up. So you've had unforgiveness for 15 years and you've had neuropathy for 15 years. Do you see a pattern, right?
Yeah.
So what this does, this whole process does, is uncovers the root of where these things come from. Unforgiveness is the biggest thing. But as I started to go out and walk up to people at Walmart, again, that was my testing ground, and then I would start to test these different things. How do you lead someone into identifying where this spiritual root may be? I started to see, again, 90% of the people that I would guide through this process be instantly healed of whatever the issue and struggles were that they were dealing with. Then I started to formulate my skill set in business, Sarah, is to take very complex processes, like an employee has to go through all these steps to execute on something, and to create a standardized operating procedure. In business world, we call it an SOP,
Yes.
that you could take any person who don't even know what they're doing, as long as they go through step after step exactly the way it said, then they get the exact same outcome.
Yes.
So that's what I've done with this. This is actually chapter 12 of my book. And it's a worksheet where you can make a list asking God to remind you of different things that have happened over your life where you violated His standard. And there are about 18 different categories. And then there's a process of how do you pray through that. Prayer for people who are not very spiritual or religious is simply speaking out to this Creator, to speak to Him, and it's the same thing as speaking out that also turns off these open doors spiritually. Let me see if this makes sense. If I get really upset at someone, I blow my top, then it opens up a doorway for I'm going to use 3 terms, they all mean the same thing. A spirit of anger to come in, or a dark energy entity that creates anger, or a low vibration. Okay? Low vibration, dark energy, spirit. They all are saying the same things, just depending on what your language is. So when that dark energy, low vibrating spirit comes in, what it does is it amplifies anger in your life, and you can't get rid of anger. You're always angry. You're always in the least little thing, and it just snaps you, and you blow up in anger. So the way that you instantly get healed of your anger issue is you turn off that legal right. You remove that entity out of your life. And the way that you do that is this concept called the prayer of freedom, where you identify where it began, and then you basically say to God, I'm sorry that I did that, and now would you remove this issue? My daughter, this was really interesting. Do you know anyone who suffered, or who either does or has suffered with panic attacks or night terrors or things of that sort?
Yeah.
So my daughter, when she was 23, she said, Dad, I've been having night terrors 2 and 3 times a week. Can you help me with it? I said, oh, sure, that's real easy. When's the first time you remember getting afraid? She said, about 3 or 4 years old, watching this TV show program with my cousin. I said, okay, so let's go back there. We just confess, God, I confess I was wrong to get afraid. We broke any negative spiritual connections that might have been with her and that friend, and then asked God to remove the spirit of fear. She's never had night attacks ever since.
Incredible.
My wife used to suffer with panic attacks, but it's interesting. Her mom had panic attacks, and her mom's mom had panic attacks, and my wife's sister has panic attacks. So you see, there's something spiritual. People say, well, it's a learned thing, it's genetics. No, it's actually a spiritual thing. So I led my wife through this same process. She hadn't had panic attacks ever since. So all these things that are in our lives that just take away this quality, what you call that contentment, that just peacefulness of everything being fulfilled, it's usually something in the spiritual side of things, that if we address the spiritual root, we can get rid of it. And because once the root's gone, its manifestation in our life disappears.
Yeah.
Can I share some more, or do we need to go for a break yet?
No, we're good. We're going to go from here all the way to the end.
Okay, great.
Yeah, keep going.
So what I did is when I wrote the book, The Prayer of Freedom, I put it together because I wanted to create a step-by-step process that anyone could do on their own. And then to test it, I teach as a volunteer at an addiction recovery center for women. This place houses over 500 women, and most of them been in and out of jail multiple times. Half of them are wearing an ankle bracelet because they're there by court order. And my class is the favorite because people come in sick and they leave free. So at the time, this was a few years back when I was putting this together, I wanted to statistically measure how successful is this process when I'm not involved at all. So I gave all the ladies what is now my Chapter 12. Chapter 12 is a worksheet that you go through to identify these places where maybe you have violated your conscience that God has placed in there, violated one of God's standards. And then how do you pray through that to remove these issues from your life? So I gave the ladies in my 3 classes, each class 15 or 20 people, I gave them Chapter 12. And I said, do this on your own, and then report back to me. And then I did one more thing. This is real interesting. I gave each of them, before they went through this process, because I track it, I wanted to statistically measure, make sure that this is really working. So I gave each of them what's called an issue grid. So this is an example of one. You'll see in their handwriting all the issues going on in their life. The first column is where you see 10. That's how it was right then before they went through this process. So these ladies are dealing with multiple types of addictions, like addictions for drugs, alcohol, pornography, sex, all kinds of mental issues like darkness in their mind, anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder. They're dealing with all kinds of physical issues like back pain, arthritis, restless leg syndrome. Then they're dealing with other illnesses, COPD, neuropathy, that type of stuff. When they went through, I gave them 30 days. And I gave them a simple process to spread it out over 30 days. And then I had every one of those ladies that went through the process take their issue grid sheet and recalibrate the intensity. 87% of those ladies, everything went from whatever it was to a 0. Everything, not just one, everything. The only 1 or 2 exceptions of that, they had one item that was still about a 3-ish. Okay, went from a 10 to a 3 or an 8 to a 2. So I want to read you the story of just one of them, just to give you an idea of what is possible when you start to look at this as a spiritual root using a process to turn off those spiritual roots and get free. This is a lady named Catherine. She was part of this group that went through this. And this is not a unique circumstance. This is the typical response I see. She said, I want to thank you for the prayer of freedom. It has changed my life. Growing up, my relationship with my mom was really tough. She was abusive, and she and my stepdad would drink and get into lots of fights. By the time I was in 7th grade, she said she didn't want anything to do with me and left. Can you imagine a 7th grade girl? Your mom said, I want nothing more to do with you and I'm leaving.
Wow.
Catherine said, that's when life began spiraling downward. By 16 years old, I was having sex with lots of boys and started getting into drugs. That was just over 10 years ago. Before doing the prayer of freedom, I was addicted to heroin and fentanyl and meth. I had a lot of worry and stress and anxiety. On a scale of 1 to 10, they were probably an 8. I've had constant allergies and sinus headaches for years, migraines 4 out of 7 days a week, and a super heavy feeling like I was carrying around an overweight backpack every day. Life has really been difficult. But the prayer of freedom and repenting changed everything. Literally, everything is gone. No more sinus issues, all gone. No more headaches and migraines, all gone. No more heaviness, it's all gone. No more anxiety or stress or worries. Literally, on a scale of 1 to 10, they've all gone to 0. Even my addictions have gone down to 0. I don't want drugs anymore. I have no urges for them anymore. And even the thought of any drug disgusts me. It's all gone. What this shows, Sarah, is these issues that we're dealing with have a spiritual root. They're not mental and physical, but spiritual. Those are the 3 pillars of health: mental, physical, and spiritual. What's happened is our healthcare system has removed the spiritual and said it's got to be only mental or physical because we don't believe in the spiritual. But that's why so many people stay progressively bad. Now, I'm not saying everything is spiritual. Prayer freedom doesn't work 100% of the time. But everything I've tried with it, it's about 90% successful with everything I've guided people through with it on. And what's also interesting, Sarah, because of how the spiritual realm works in terms of these things, and I explained this in my book, so people can do this. You can actually go through a portion of this on behalf of a loved one, like a parent or a child, and start to free them up. I was talking with a lady named Katie recently. Her mom, Katie is my age, so her mom is, or no, Katie is 40s, her mom is 70s, and she's been an addict for years. She's had all kinds of problems. Everyone's an idiot. She's cussing all the time. She always tells Katie, you're wrong about this. So I guided Katie to go through the prayer of freedom on her mother's behalf, taking this same list that we would make for ourselves and make it out on behalf of what she knows about with her mother.
Right.
And then sort of like an attorney in a courtroom, the attorney says, Judge, I'm representing Beatty Carmichael, and he says this. So now the attorney can speak on my behalf. Right. So I guided Katie to pray on her mother's behalf. God, I'm coming to you on behalf of my mother and on her behalf, blah, 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 blah. She said within 2 weeks of doing that, she got back on the phone with her mom. There was no cussing. There was no saying you're wrong. There was a shift. Katie drove to her mom's house, guided her through this, and Katie on her own started saying, you know, I think I've been an alcoholic. Well, yes, Mom, we've been telling you that all along. And I've become a different person when I drink. Yes, Mom, I've been telling you that. You know, all these things that her mom rejected, she now senses was wrong. She started to read her Bible a lot and saying, Katie, did you know the Bible says this? All these, the whole change. She starts to be happy in life, joyful, loving people. Everything shifted because her daughter started this process first and then engaged with her mom and guided her through it. I see this all the time when a parent does this on behalf of a child, a child does it on behalf of a parent, or even spouses and loved ones do it on behalf of each other, because there's so much in the spiritual side of who we are that we just don't understand, but it impacts our lives on a daily basis, that this whole idea of the thief stealing, killing, and destroying, most people, when they've gone through deep challenges, they'll go, yeah, something's been destroying my life.
Yeah.
And we've been praying, God, please take it away, but God doesn't do it. Why? Because he's already told us how to do it on our own.
Yeah.
And there was a real interesting story. My son, who hears God really clearly and has for many years, when he was in high school, he started to have spiritual attacks 2 and 3 times a week. And these are dark energy, low vibration, demonic spirits, whatever you want to call it. But they would attack, they would show up in his room, and it was one of these supernatural things that are just freaky. And it scared him to death. They became physical at times. And he would keep praying to God, please stop it. God would always say, no. God, would you please stop this? No. And then this is what's interesting. After about 6 months, my son asked a different question. This is probably what we ought to be doing. Rather than asking God, please take this away, maybe there's something that we have control over. And so he said, God, how do I stop it? And God gave him the answer, which is the same thing that we're doing the prayer of freedom.
Yeah.
And so that night he had this spiritual attack approach him. He obeyed and did what God told him to. It disappeared instantly and has never returned. And that's what I'm dealing with a lot of times is we think that simply because we ask God to do something that he ought to do it because we ask him to. Or in the legalistic side of the religiosity of the Christian church sometimes, we think that if we ask him to do something and he doesn't, then it must be his will that we're sick or that we stay in that condition. But that's not it either. The best way that I can understand this, if we put it in human terms, my daughter, when she was little, we would give her rules, right? Mommy and Daddy say, don't do this, and if you need to calm down or whatever it is, make up your bed, clean your room. And if she didn't, we would remove privileges. We would spank her. We would put her in timeout. We would do something that was uncomfortable. And what we're looking for as a parent is a heart change.
Right.
I can give her a little phone back so she can communicate and text with her friends, but more than wanting her to have communication with her friends, I want her to have a change of heart that what she's been doing was wrong. So I take away her phone, let's say in this example, and then she comes to me and said, Daddy, I'm so sorry. I know I was wrong. I was being fussy. Would you forgive me? I say, oh, yes, honey, I'd love to forgive you. I put my arms around her and I give her phone back. Why? Because now she's learned what I want her to learn, which is take responsibility. She was wrong, not me. And it seems like God wants us to do the same thing. When we simply say, I'm sorry, I was wrong. I forgive that person that I know I should have forgiven already. When we do that, it's like he now allows us to get rid of the things that were bothering our lives because we weren't doing it in the first place. And when we start to strategically go through our life, make this list of these things where we violate God's standard, I've seen people's lives just totally blossom. All their dreams and aspirations start to move in the right direction. They are living a fulfilled life. They no longer have junk in their life. They're no longer squabbling with everyone. They're no longer in pain or in sickness or have these issues going on. It's like it all starts to disappear. And what's interesting, at my website, theprayerfreedombook.com, you can actually watch some of these stories unfold. People will share their stories and testimonies of what's happening in their life, and it seems like too good to be true, but they're all 100% true. That's the cool thing with this. So I've talked a lot. I'll turn it back over to you, but I really love this.
Beatty, it's just absolutely amazing to me that you come from this multi-generational space of being in medicine and science, and that your heart is so tender towards people. What I've noticed in some cases that people who come from multi-generational, whatever it happens to be, that it's like, yeah, kind of flippant. This is what we do. This is how we do it. This is, you know, because of that space of a lifelong of marination inside of it.
Yeah.
And yet you've been so tender in looking for ways to be able to help people who are your loved ones, but also people, you're not keeping this just for them. You are saying to everybody, this is something that you can do. And I really appreciate how you open up that space to say, yes, things can be mental, yes, they can be physical, but we have really forgotten to have conversations about the spiritual,
Yeah.
about the unseen world, and how impactful that is for our lives. And are there spaces that we can go back and look and go, oh, I missed the mark in this particular area? And whether it happens to be about forgiveness for somebody else or choosing to forgive ourselves. And I think that can also be another part of the conversation of choosing that space of saying, I missed the mark and I'm going to ask for forgiveness. In addition to that, I'm going to lay down all of the anchor. There's another word for it, that not anger
Bitterness.
as in being upset, but that space of animosity towards yourself.
Yeah.
That lay that down as well, to be in a place of saying, I'm also not going to be the person who's going to be stealing from my future. I'm going to choose to be the person who is saying, I see this, it's happened, it's done, and I'm choosing to live in a different energy. I'm going to share a little bit about the Romans that may be kind of gross for some people, but I think this so fits so well in this space. The Romans, if somebody killed somebody else, one of the punishments that they would do would be to take that dead body with chains, put it onto the person who had killed them. And their thought was, part of what would happen actually is that over time, as the body is decaying, it would also then cause the person to become sick, and then they would also die. I think it would be a pretty hard way to go, right? But I think that we do this to ourselves, where we hold on to things that we have been told that we can let go of. And yet we think if we do this self-flagellation somehow that we are going to become more pure or more better. And in fact, what we are doing is that we are actually taking our life away from our future, that we are making such a huge impact. And so I think what you are talking about here has such deep wisdom to it, not just about for ourselves and for other people and the communities that we are in and seeing communities flourish in a different way, but also this space of just having a quiet mind.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so, we carry a lot of things in our life, and everything that we carry that shouldn't be there is detracting from our life. When Jesus made that comment, that the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but I came that you might have abundant life. What we have to do is we have to get rid of the thieves that have been stealing, killing, and destroying our lives. Sometimes it's that unforgiveness. Sometimes it's regretting what we did and what we cost ourselves, but we don't let it go. And because we don't, more and more keeps happening into our lives.
Yeah.
This is, the Hindus have this. They have this concept of karma. If you do bad things will happen to you. If you do good things will happen.
Yeah.
And what they're doing is the same thing that we all see.
Mm-hmm.
Intrinsically, we know that if we do things against this God or something that he doesn't tell us to do, or says that it's wrong, that there's some sort of consequence, but we've never been able to put our finger on the consequence.
Yeah.
What I'd like to encourage your audience is you're living those consequences, but you don't recognize the connection. But once you go through this step-by-step process that's in chapter 12 of the Prayer of Freedom, the same one that I use with my addiction recovery students, is you'll start to see all these things in your life that you may have even thought was just normal age stuff or whatever it is. You'll start to see these things disappear and you go, oh my gosh, I didn't know life could be so beautiful all the time. And yet, it really can be.
and
It
fulfilling that
is.
space of all of those different pieces. What I also appreciate about what you were sharing is that you've come at this as a scientist, saying, if I'm not present, if this is written down in a book and someone else reads it, will they get the same results? And I really appreciate that space of you saying that you don't have to be the person who is there helping somebody to walk through this. And that's one of the reasons why you've written the book,
Yes.
is to be able to help so many other people as well in that space of saying, take this information and know that this is for you. But there's agency. If you want this, that there are things that you need to actions you need to take and follow through on in order to have that space of freedom, in order to have that space of expanse.
It's it offers hope. You
Mm.
know, I think back on Katie. She's been praying for her mom. So when she left her mom as a teenager and would never deal with her, wouldn't even talk with her. It was that bitter. And then about, I think it was 6 years ago, God just kind of worked in her heart to love her mother,
Mm.
because it's, you love her mother, you love your mother, not what your mother has become, right?
Correct.
There's a difference. So
Yes.
so that started to break through.
Mm.
And then when Katie got my book and went through it on her own, she realized maybe this could help my mother too.
Yeah.
She started to go through it for her mother, and now she has her mother back. She's so thrilled. She and her mom talk every day now, and is the most beautiful relationship that has been missing for decades out of her life. So this can not only restore that, this can restore just the quality of life and everything else. And I just want to really share, for those who they've lost hope for
Mm.
anything being better in your life, there is hope. And that hope is 90% likelihood the prayer of freedom. It's
Mm.
not going to work on everything, but I've seen it break through so many things,
Mm.
that you owe it to yourself to actually go through that exercise. The first part of the book, up to chapter 12, just lays the foundation of what I've seen and tested, and
Mm.
story after story applying this. So you start to get a deeper understanding of cause and effect,
Mm.
and it puts it in very simple, easy to understand terms for anyone.
Yeah.
And then as you move to chapter 12 is the step-by-step plan. How do you do it? Just like I was talking about with my SOPs. I can
Mhm.
take a brand new employee, they just go through this checklist, and it executes perfectly on the outcome every time. That's how this whole thing is worked. So you don't have to know what's going on, or there's
Mm.
no effort really. It's just going through the process. And then the rest of the book is, how do you help others get free if you want to?
Yeah.
How do you stay free yourself? It's really fabulous, and I encourage anyone who's struggling
Yes.
to get a copy. The best place would be the website, theprayerfreedombook.com,
Beautiful.
simply because there's some free stuff, there's some cool things to watch, and there's so many books with the word prayer and freedom
Mm.
that when you go to my site, there's a link straight to Amazon that takes you straight to the right page, okay?
That's
So
it's a
that way
beautiful
you'll never mess up and get the wrong book.
Yes. Beautiful. Beatty, are there things that you want to reiterate in the time that we have left that you want people just to walk away with? And maybe you've already said it, but to say it just one more time for us, please.
Yeah, there is hope. We don't have to live in depression or anxiety. We don't have to live in chronic pain or allergies or asthma. We don't have to live in constant relationship conflict or broken relationships. All of these things are the things that are the thieves that steal, kill, and destroy. And there are so many people that have been praying and praying and begging God
Mm.
and have given up hope. I remember I was doing one show, and this guy, he's a Christian. He believes in praying for people, and God has healed many of the people that he prays for. But he got this pain in the lower back and his hips, and he started praying for himself, and God didn't heal. And after about 2 years of doing that, I mean, it was pretty severe pain, he got upset at God, just fed up, and just basically wanted to flush his relationship almost. And on the show, I said, can I demonstrate this? He said, yeah, I'll demonstrate. And he had no expectation. And in 5 minutes, all the pain was instantly gone. and he was blown away. So I want to just encourage you that there is still hope, and just reach out, get the Prayer of Freedom book, go through the process, because you have a 90% chance that this is going to get rid of your issues just as it has with everyone else.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work, you don't like the book, send it back. Amazon will give your money back, so it won't cost you anything. There's no risk. Just give it a shot.
Yeah.
I think you'll be pleased.
Beatty, I will be ordering a book, because there are, as I shared earlier, that space of, I think that there's more. And
Yes.
I am certain of that. So thank you so much for taking time and coming and sharing this wisdom with us. I so appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate being here, and hopefully this will help some people.
Absolutely. And to our audience, we say thank you so much for being here and listening to the end, allowing the wisdom of the ages to be able to seep into your soul, into your being, for this spiritual conversation to be one that has an opening for you to take a look at your life and determine if you are satisfied with where it is. If you, like me, think that there is space for more, I just encourage you to consider getting Beatty's book, and to know that you are in the right place, that I don't think that anything happens by coincidence. You're listening to this, I think, on purpose. That's my belief system. And to know that you are important. And I encourage you to take good care of you. Until next time, many blessings.